Alright, imagine that you are Sir Quintavious III, a medieval commander in charge of an army tasked to conquer and loot a neighboring town. You have a problem though. At the first sight of your army, all the townspeople and soldiers and knights fled to the local castle, pulling up the drawbridge behind them. You really want to kill them and take their valuables, but no matter how politely you ask, they will not let your army in. You could just try to rush some gates, maybe get a few ladders over the walls, but that will probably just lead to a bunch of your men dying and you still not being able to get in. You could just leave, but then you would be leaving a bunch of loot and a large force of enemies behind you. What you need, Sir Quintavious, is a siege. And lucky enough for you, you are watching a video explaining sieges. So just sit down and listen while I tell you what a siege is, what machines they would use, and give some examples of them through history. And remember, if you like this video you should make sure to subscribe and drop a like on this. For this video, we will talk mostly about European sieges and tactics, but sieges have taken place all through history in many different places. So when an army wanted to get into a castle, they would often lay siege to it. This meant that they would surround the castle, blocking supplies from getting in, and block people from entering and leaving as well. The attackers would then wait for the defenders to starve or die from disease or surrender. Attackers would often also launch attacks, using machines or ladders to try to destroy or scale the walls, or simply using weapons like bows or catapults to pick off defenders. So let's talk about some of these machines. Up first is a classic, the catapult. There are many types of catapults, including trebuchets, onagers, and ballistae, and I will mention some of my favorites. Up first is the trebuchets. This catapult used a long arm on an axis with a sling attached to the end of the arm to hurl incendiary devices or hard projectiles to destroy castle walls and kill defenders. The addition of the sling to the end of the arm allowed for the stone to move at much faster speeds, making the trebuchets one of the most powerful pre-gunpowder siege weapons. These trebuchets came in two types, mangonels, also known as traction trebuchets, and counterweight trebuchets. The first type, mangonels, used men pulling on ropes to pull the arm down, which required significant manpower for larger trebuchets. Counterweight trebuchets, however, were made by attaching a large weight to the end of a trebuchet's arm and then letting it fall, which provided greater power and greater ease than the manpower version. Up next we have the onager, which is probably what you think of when you hear the word catapult. These catapults were made by pulling down an arm against the tension of ropes, then suddenly releasing it. Often depicted with cups at the end of these arms, the onager required about 8 men to wind the arm back and had immense recoil that did not allow it to be used on castle walls or ships. The next type of catapult is the ballista, which is basically a large crossbow that can have a projectile like a stone loaded into it to smash into walls. Outside of the realm of catapults, other weapons used were battering rams, which were essentially large logs that could be smashed into gates or walls, and later versions of the catapult suspended it by ropes or chains so that instead of being rushed forward by men it could instead swing into the target. A siege hook was another siege weapon, which was used to pierce the cracks between wall stones then pull the stones out, slowly dismantling a wall. Siege towers were also used, and these towers had 4 wheels, and were tall rectangular structures that were often equipped with a gangplank at the top. Archers could stand on the top of the tower and fire arrows at the defenders, and pikemen could also be placed on it to spear any defenders who got in its way. Upon reaching the tower, the gangplank would drop, and soldiers housed at the top could rush over it. In addition, some of these towers had battering rams attached, which they could use to knock down walls or castle gates. These towers had to be covered in a fireproof material like iron or leather. These could be countered fairly easily by digging a ditch or making a slope along the castle walls. There was another tactic to get inside the walls, but instead of being a machine, it was actually a mine. Attackers would often mine under walls to make the foundation unstable and collapse the walls. The defenders also used tunnels too, with defenders often using tunnels to transport information or food to the castle, and also digging counter-tunnels into enemy tunnels in order to prevent the attackers from bringing the walls down. Now I'm going to talk quickly about a few medieval sieges. Up first is the Viking siege of Paris in 845. In 845, a large fleet of Viking ships, numbering anywhere from 100 to 700 ships, and around 30,000 or so Vikings, laid siege to the city of Paris after the leader of the city, Count Odo, denied to give them a bribe. The Vikings used a variety of siege engines and attacks, but eventually King Charles the Fat of the Franks arrived with his army, but instead of attacking the Vikings, he allowed them to raid upriver in the rebelling province of Burgundy, and gave them a large payment. Another notable siege was the First Siege of Rome in 408, where the Visigoth Alaric laid siege to the city of Rome, starving the citizens until they paid him a huge bounty. This siege notably saw the Pope actually allowing Romans to resume pagan sacrifices for any chance at escaping the siege, showing the severity of the situation. And the Visigoths came back later and actually sacked Rome. That's all I will be talking about today. Thank you for watching and make sure to subscribe and like the video.